only two questions from
Recording in progress.
And then we will go ahead.
I couldn't hear you. Could you come again?
Yeah, you may please take two questions only from Helen so that we could ask.
MIT Center for Future Skills Excellence, MIT Art, Design and Technology University, Pune. India brings together the world's top tech women influencers leading the exponential technology domain and rising awareness on trending hot topics such as blockchain technology, data science, AI and ML, cybersecurity, cloud computing, metaverse, fintech, robotics, digital transformation and many more.
Join the second International Virtual Summit on Women Frontiers in Exponential Technology from 5th to 8th March 2022. Proudly organized by MIT Center for Future Skills Excellence India. Visit mitfuturesskills.org/WFET or call on 7066995599. Transform yourself into a winning professional.
Greetings of the day. This is Suruchi Bhatt, your host for this session. On behalf of MIT Center for Future Skills Excellence, MIT Art, Design and Technology University, Pune, it is my pleasure to welcome all the esteemed guests and enthusiastic participants from all parts of the globe. This is the second International Virtual Summit on Women Frontiers in Exponential Technology, the platform to get inspired, informed, and guided by global technology leaders. At the outset, let me welcome our lovely keynote speaker, Ms. Helen Wall, founder and principal, Helen Data Design. Thank you so much for joining us today, ma'am.
Glad to be here.
MIT Art, Design and Technology believes in starting every journey of knowledge by seeking blessings from Goddess Saraswati. May I please request you all to join your hands for the Saraswati Vandana. Thank you very much. The MIT Center for Future Skills Excellence, under the guidance of MIT Art, Design and Technology University, is proud to bring on one platform women who are world motivators in technology. The second International Virtual Summit on Women Frontiers in Exponential Technology is an attempt to salute women who influence and motivate and create awareness on the power of emerging technologies and career growth. To know more about the initiative, I'm pleased to introduce you to Professor Suraj Bhoyar, Project Director, MIT Center for Future Skills Excellence. Professor Bhoyar is a passionate digital evangelist at MIT ADT University, a postgraduate in mechanical engineering, patents law, and in educational administration. He is keen to develop an ecosystem for nurturing skill development as well as employability. His dynamic role in getting future skills training for career aspirants make him confident to build an enterprising and innovative India. He dreams to reshape the lives of students and working professionals via excellence in future exponential technologies. which will have a strong technological impact in tomorrow's economy. With an exponential learning curve and amazing networking skills, his dream is to lead the Ministry of Higher and Technical Education for better industry-institute interaction ecosystem development. May I please request, sir, to address the participants?
Thank you so much, Suruchi, for the lovely introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to one and all. It is my great privilege and pleasure to welcome you for the first keynote session on the fourth day of Second International Virtual Summit on Women Frontiers in Exponential Technology, proudly organized by MIT Center for Future Skills Excellence. This is an immensely exciting morning for MIT EDT University, and the active participation from all over the globe and delegates from different countries affirms the relevance and meaningfulness of the celebration of International Women's Day. Happy International Women's Day to all. With this, let me first acknowledge the presence of our eminent guest today. It is our indeed pleasure to have amongst us the chief guest of today's keynote session, Helen Wall, founder and principal, Helen Data Design, Houston. Welcome you, ma'am. I also take this opportunity to welcome Honorable Executive President and Vice Chancellor of MIT Art, Design and Technology University, Professor Dr. Mangesh Karat, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Your presence is indeed source of great inspiration to every one of us. I would also like to welcome Honorable Pro Vice Chancellor, Dr. Anand Chakradev, sir, for being with us today. I'm happy to welcome Dr. Ramakant Kaple, sir, Director IQAC, Professor Dr. Sunita Karad, ma'am, Dean Management and Director ICT. I also welcome Dr. Mahesh Chopde, Registrar MIT EDT University. We are also delighted to welcome all the deans, directors, principals, HOIs, HODs, faculty members, and the organizing team members from MIT Center for Future Skills Excellence. My dear friends, the International Virtual Summit is dedicated to addressing the concerns, sharing information, and ways to make improvements in the skills and learning space in order to assist firms so that they could develop a future-ready strategy for their business endeavors, which would definitely benefit global workplaces and workforces. Individuals and companies are already in the transition mode from Industry 4.0 to 5.0, but this definitely necessitates the skill sets, which are very much important. Being the international summit, this is going to be a full of synergy of information, knowledge, and wisdom, and with the aim of equipping stakeholders with the required skill sets and knowledge. MIT Center for Future Skills Excellence pursues the upskilling and upgrading initiatives as one of its primary objectives. My dear friends, it is quite obvious at this time of intensive economic digitalization, robust data analysis capabilities are essential for any business concerns and success. So demand for qualified data specialists continues to soar because data analysis lead the charge in collecting and analyzing the key data points to make business decisions. How else does a company know that products they should order more of? Or how would they know which customers are dissatisfied with the services? Every company needs a data analyst, which makes anyone in the field of high demand. The world has more data than we can use. All organizations are inundated with the data processes, products, operations, and customers. Everything, if it has a digital footprint, then it's out there somewhere. The more we can learn from consumer behavior information, the more accurate predictions we could make. So what is the difference between regular data analysis and when we are talking about big data? Although the answer for this question cannot be universally determined, there are a number of characteristics which define the data. And these are related to 4 V's that I always insist: volume, variety, velocity, and veracity. Volume, the volume of the data which we get. The variety of data in the various formats, because we do get data from various sources. Veracity, because both data quality and availability matters. So when it comes to traditional business analytics, the source of data matters a lot, right? Because we need to manage the greater uncertainty and the quality related to that. And when we talk about velocity, the speed at which the data is being get processed, right? So because the data will be an input of the technology, and it will be essential to be able to store and digest the large amount of information. And the output part will be the decisions and reactions, right? So important thing that is they are able to react with the necessary speed to boost the business area. So today we are going to have a very knowledgeable and insightful session on the power of Power BI. So let's listen to our keynote speaker, Ms. Helen Wall. And finally, on behalf of the organizing team, MIT Center for Future Skills Excellence, I do believe and hope that this Virtual Summit 2022 fulfills your expectation and sets a new milestone in taking your careers and knowledge to the greater heights. Thank you so much once again for joining us today. Over to you, Suruchi.
Thank you very much, sir. You may have heard that business intelligence helps corporate executives, business managers, and other users to make informed business decisions. But what is Power BI? Is it easy to learn? How do enterprises adopt this technology? We will know more about the session, Unleash the Power of Power BI, to which we are honored to have Ms. Helen Wall, founder and principal, Helen Data Design. But before we pass on the session, we have a little AV. Can I please request the technical team for the same?
Helen Wall is a power user of Microsoft Power BI, Excel, and Tableau. Her primary driver behind working in these tools is finding the point where data analytics meets design principles, thus making data visualization platforms both an art and science. She considers herself both a lifelong teacher and a learner. She is a LinkedIn learning instructor for Power BI courses that focus on all aspects using the application, including the data methods, dashboard design, and programming. She has published content on data science, analytics, and visualization. She is an enthusiastic designer and developer of business intelligence dashboards and visualization supporting many business functions and industries. It is our pleasure to have Ms. Helen Wall join us in the second International Virtual Summit on Women Frontiers in Exponential Technology.
Thank you, ma'am, for being with us today. The session is all yours.
Thank you for having me. So it's really difficult to cover Power BI in under an hour, like even it's just scratching the surface. So what I thought I'd do today is I'm going to share kind of an overview of like why Power BI, and then I'm going to do a short demo in Power BI to connect to a data set. We can see some of the like the key features of Power BI, and then we'll have like a short Q&A session. So I'm going to start by sharing so this is kind of an introduction to Power BI. And for those that are interested, one video that I highly recommend is if you write this down. So this is World History in 4 Minutes, and it's by Hans Rosling. He's a well-known, Swedish physician and global health professor. And so this video is well worth watching for those of you when you get a chance. So the Power BI ecosystem is actually connected to a lot of other components that already existed within the Microsoft space. So you're looking at so many of you may have seen some of these systems, right? So what we have is what we're looking at is like a data flow is a service that's available in the Power BI service, and then Power BI, for the most part, is kind of a lower code environment. And one of the things that I think a lot of people are looking for, to do more coding, but the reality is that you don't necessarily need to code in order to get the work you want to do done. There's a lot of tools that do embrace, low no-code environments, and you can always build up and learn more about coding from there. And that's actually kind of what I did. So the background of Power BI, and this is kind of an old diagram, but you've got sort of these pieces of it that existed that came from other places. And so these are some of kind of the older logos from Microsoft. Some of the newer ones came out in 2019. I think they redid the suite, but there's, right, so Power BI is kind of at the top, and it's like this umbrella tool. And it also encompasses, so Access, and which also includes SQL Server analysis services. So that's the the joined model that you would get from like a SQL Server database. Includes maps, graphs and charts, which are what a lot of people recognize as Power Pivot. The DAX language originally came out in Power Pivot, and then they're now focusing on using it in Power BI. And then, Excel's ubiquitous in the business world. So when we think about Power BI, we're really looking at different kind of communication levels, and you're always looking to monitor the data, right? So we want to know, say that you run a factory, you want to be able to know when something's kind of going awry. You want to, be able to watch the line, so to speak. But then you've also got this element of like analyzing the results. You want to be able to summarize it to someone as to what's going on. And then finally, we want to be able to make decisions with it. And that's really kind of the end goal, is that what does this mean for the business going forward? Like, visuals are great, analysis is great, but how is this going to drive decisions that are going on in the future? So the high-level process for it, and this is kind of oversimplifying it a bit, is you import the data, create calculations, so you can transform the data, add fields, add necessary fields, and then create the dashboards, which is like the visuals. And this is a very high level approach. Each one of these has quite a bit more steps and available functionalities. And in fact, a lot. Like, it's a very big ecosystem. So one thing that I try to keep in mind, especially, and I'm probably not going to have a chance to get to this today, but there's this idea of nudging. And what I mean by this is that if you create, this analysis and this view, and you're trying to communicate to your end business user, whoever they are. And one of the things is that people aren't very good about like knowing the instructions firsthand. So I want to kind of give them tiny prompts about how to interact with the data. And this could be like hover over a point or select a bar to filter the rest of the space. So it's this idea of the nudging. So I use the term nudge prompts to guide how we develop our work, and how we kind of connect between, like, if you're a developer and you're working creating something for the business, is how to create and match that to what the business user wants. And that's giving them nudges about how to interact with the data. So I'm going to show an example of Power BI. So I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, so we open up Power BI. It changes every month. Every month there are new monthly updates that get pushed in. In fact, there's just this last month. So this is the February 2022 version. They redid the formatting panes, so you can see the visuals on the side. However, we don't have any visuals because we don't have any data yet. So you can start in many different places in Power BI, but what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get the data. I'll choose an Excel workbook. And let's see what so I have like a presentations. Okay. So let's open this up and see what it looks like. And there's multiple different connections options, but I'm choosing kind of the one that I started off with ages ago, which is the Excel connection. So once we've loaded it, let's take a look at what this looks like. So we see that we have two potential, these are essentially like queries that we can set up, and we see that there are two of them. And the reason that this occurs is one of them is actually looking at the sheets, so that we think that's the top one. And then the second one is actually looking at a table within the document. So it's identifying what the tables are within an Excel file and saying, okay, this is maybe the data that we want to pull it from. So I'm going to select the second option. And if I hit transform data, this is going to open up the Power Query editor, and we can transform our data if we would like. And interestingly, there's the headers aren't here. So this is so funny that this happened. So I've selected a sheet, and essentially now I want to essentially put the first row in here as headers. And so promote the headers, and for some reason it's disappearing above. Didn't happen earlier. And then you can also change the data types as well. So if we select change data type, these are examples of transformation steps. So connecting to the source and then choosing the table within the Excel file, these are kind of the extract steps of this ETL framework. And then from there, we can transform the data. So in this case, it's promoted the headers using those as the first row and changing the data type. And we can also do other things with our data. So for example, we can add like a custom column if we would like, and this opens a box. We can set it up. And there's a lot of other options for transformation, like you can group them, you can change, you can do calculations on them. So for example, if you wanted to like take the mod or you can divide it by another number, right? Sort of the standard numerical calculation. The other thing is quite helpful is text often has things for us to fix. And so if we select the text column, for example, there's an option for we can trim the white space. And so there's a lot of really neat transformation functions within Power BI. And one of the things that's actually really neat is that Power Query records our steps for us. So if we go into the advanced editor, we can open up this window, and it shows us the steps we take. So in this case, we can see we connect to the source. We chose the sheet, promoted the headers, and changed the data type. And we can make adjustments to this code. And it's also tracked in the applied steps. So it's a really great way to keep track of what's going on with data. And Power Query is also available in Excel, and so it's a game changer. And so if you have a Windows computer, check out Power Query Editor. So once I've set up the data, and this one's pretty straightforward, I'm just going to select to load it. And so I'll hit the close and apply button. So this is going to apply the query editor changes and load it into Power BI. Okay, so once we've loaded the data, we're currently in the report view. You can see that it's selected with this yellow bar next to the kind of little graph icon. There's two other views within the Power BI. This is in Power BI Desktop, and I can choose data, and this will show me a table. So this looks kind of like Excel. And we can see the data that we just connected to and loaded. And then the other one is if we're connecting tables together. And this is something for those of you that maybe have a background in analysis services. This is something that that you may be familiar. You may think this looks familiar, and a lot of the technology grows on it. Kind of started at one place and grew, and it connected to other tools. And so this is an example of where Power BI kind of connects to these other powerful functionalities that already exist. And some of them have been out for a few decades. So if I want to create a chart, so I created population data. And so this is actually the Hans Rosling data. If you watch the video, this is the population data. And so I already did some editing before I loaded it, just so I would have kind of a smoother demo. And so I'm going to create some visuals to go in this space. So when I first sort of think about like what I want to see, one of the things we would be curious about is how the population grows over time. So I can add, if I add a line chart, for example, I can then add this year field. So this is going to show the yearly population totals. And I add this to the axis. And then I'll add the population to the values. And spread this out a bit. And actually, I'm going to use this stack column chart so we can kind of see that the years that are a bit more defined, right? Because it's not a rapidly fluctuating population of the world, doesn't change drastically overnight. So we have the population by the year. And so this tells us, okay, we can see the world population is growing. Further analysis, we could analyze the rate at which it's going, because we see there's kind of we see it gets steeper at some points, and then in some places it's shallower. I can also, so we have the region, and I can add that to the legend. And what this does is separates our stacked column chart into, this is going to be 5 different columns. So this is a really helpful way for us to see time series trends. So then another question that, is something people inevitably ask is, where are these people living? So in this case, another visual that I like using is the map visual. And there's a few different maps, actually. We've got a filled map. We've got this map of where it's actually like a bubble map. There's an Azure map. And there's other additional maps that we can import. And there's a shape map, and we'd have to have the background for that. So let's just try out a map and see what it looks like. So I'm going to select the map to start with. And then I'm going to add the country to the location. And so you get a message, you see like, okay, the maps and filled maps are disabled. So let's just try another option then. So, okay, so we need to enable this. So we go into options and settings, and you go into options. And this inevitably happens. Things change every month. There's updates. And I've just kind of learned to keep going with it. And whatever's new, there might be something I don't like initially about it. But ultimately, I kind of like all the upgrades, get to the point where I like all the upgrades. So in this case, we'll look at the preview. So maps are enabled. Let's take a look at what this says. Oh, security. Okay. So in this case, I want to go to the security options. And I want to check that I can use the map and the filled map visuals. And then let's see if this lets me add this. So I'll add the legend. So this is kind of looking a bit not really what we want. So let's choose another map option and choose the other one. So this is kind of the bubble map's really kind of the standard one. So when we look at this, we have the different fields, right? So we have location, legend, and the fields themselves change depending on which visual we select. So we see that the map visual is different from what we saw with the stacked column chart, because it is a different visual and there are different fields that go into it. And so when we have our location, we don't want to use the population as the legend, but we do want to use the population as the size. So we can just drag it to the size if we would like. And then the other thing is we can use the region as legend because there's only 5 of them and we can easily kind of tell the colors apart. And so we see a map update, and this gives us an idea. We see the larger color, like these larger circles have larger populations, and the different colors themselves, those represent different regions. So there's things that work well with various maps, and there's things that don't as much. The other thing is there's a lot of formatting options. So I'll just cover a few of them. So we see that we've got a color key in this case for the region, and it's present in both this stacked column chart and also in the map chart as well. And I don't really want to keep both of them on there. So if I want to format something like that, I will go into the formatting pane, and I want to choose something that's like specific to the visual in this case. So I can just turn the legend off for the bottom chart. So this gives us, it makes it a bit cleaner, makes it a bit easier to read. And we also have the colors from the top chart already. So then the last chart that I'm going to create in this view is I'm going to show a chart that gives us the rankings of the population, because the bubbles themselves are, they're helpful, but they're probably not really, they're hard to tell apart, right? You can't really tell, especially as you get these smaller sizes. I know that not all these countries have the same population, but there's kind of a minimum size. And yes, we can change the formatting. But let's create, in this case, I'm going to create a stacked bar chart so I can see how the countries rank. And the other thing that we can add is we can show the filters as well. So, and actually, I'm going to come back. I'm going to delete this, and then I'm going to talk through this, because right now we look at how our data is aggregated, and we go to the population, we open up the field. So if we open this down arrow, we can see we're summing it up. And the problem with summing it, this means we're summing it up like over time, right? So a lot of people on this session are in India. And so we hover over India. We see it as a population of that's well over 1 trillion. So what we want to do is we want to filter the data so we're only showing, like, say, the most recent year. So in that case, I'm going to drag, what I can do is, and there's a few different ways you can do this, but I'm going to drag the year to the filters pane. And then let's see what the basic filtering offers us. And I'm just going to go down to the bottom and only select 2022. And now, tooltips are kind of one of my favorite things in Power BI. So now when you hover over it, the population seems much more reasonable, and the US is a bit smaller number. So we see 335 million. So this is exactly what we want to see. We want to make sure that we're properly scaling our visuals depending on what you want to see. In this case, the map visual doesn't have the year associated with it, and so it's going to sum up all the populations across the years. And really, we want to only see like the most recent or an average. It doesn't make sense to sum up the aggregate of the population. So something that I do all the time for Power BI is I often will copy the visual, because this one already has the filter, and then I will paste it into the same space. And then we kind of have to do a bit more, format it a bit, and we obviously need to change the visual. So I'm going to change this to a stacked bar chart. And then we see how the numbers, we see how the populations stack up between all the regions. We're not looking at them on a map and looking at the neighbors, but we can see how these populations stack up. And we can also see, based on the color coding, what region they're from. And again, similar to what we saw here with the stacked column chart, we can turn off the legend for this. And this is just kind of a small thing to do that will make a big difference in terms of, you can see it once we turn it off, that it cleans up the visual quite a bit. So I mentioned nudge prompts. I'm going to provide an example of one of them. So there's a few different ways we can do this. So we can format the visual. So in the new formatting pane, for those of you that, if you're interested, you can download the most recent version of Power BI. If you go to the general tab, this means this is the same for really all the visuals. If you go to the general, and I'm going to select the title, and I can edit this. So in this case, I'm going to say like population map. And then I'm going to give some instructions about, so I mentioned this nudge prompt. So I'm going to say hover I don't know what's going on with this. So hover over circles for country population total in 2022. Okay, so we see this updates, and now what we know, so we've given ourselves, we've given it a title that's appropriate. We're looking at a population map. And then if we hover over the circles, then you can see what the population is for the most recent year. And so they know to interact with that rather than, me saying, well, they can experiment with this. I like to kind of be explicit about how business users are working with the data so that they feel like they have ownership in what they do. It's this IKEA proposition where they feel like they're doing a lot more of the work, so they have more ownership in it, even though there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. So one other thing we can do that would be helpful, especially for population numbers, is if we select the population, right now, you see when we hover over China, India, it's a long number and we can't see what it is. And so in the US, you separate this by the commas. In Europe, it's periods. When we add the comma, we can see that it breaks up the population and makes it easier to read. And so there's a lot of different formatting options, and they all changed last month. And you can see the same thing when you hover over all these other charts. You can see the details behind them. And there's a lot more flexibility that Power BI has in terms of like being able to format things, and it's always changing, like the formatting pane. And so this is something that's kind of actually a helpful view for looking at numbers like this, is being able to look at visuals in tandem with one another. Here we've got 3 of them, and we can shrink down these panes because if we choose to share it, this will be a bit bigger. And we can see that these 3 visuals kind of work in tandem with one another. You've got a time series visual on the bottom left, and the map in the top left, and then a ranking by the country. And sometimes it does take work to get them to fit into the space, but it is one way to get an understanding of the context of the data by looking at it through visuals that show, in this case, similar data over, different viewpoints. And obviously some of them are filtered, but I think it's helpful. People want to know time series, people want to know ranking. And if you're looking at something geographically, it's often helpful to have a map as part of it. So that's a brief overview and intro into Power BI. If anyone has questions about this or wants to learn more about how to jump into Power BI, ask away.
Thank you so much for the wonderful session that you've had with us, ma'am. It is an indeed honor to learn from the best. And, coming from somebody who is not as well versed in something like this, I could understand everything that you were saying and I could connect with you at multiple points. So we do have a plethora of questions coming in. I'd like to take them from different places, if you'll be all right. I'll narrate them to you.
Okay.
So the first one is, you're one of the most experienced entities in the field of Power BI. Would you like to tell us what inspired you and what your journey has been like?
So I learned Power BI when I got assigned it for a project back in the day. So I think Power BI had been out about a year. And so I found that that it was it was a tool. How do you describe it? Is that at the beginning, the learning curve, it's not too hard to kind of get up and running with it and to see how everything fits together. But then there's a lot more, like once you kind of learn there's always something new to learn within it. And so I was always kind of motivated by like learning something new every day.
Oh, that's lovely. So we do have a similar question. So I'll just ask you it as, a follow-up question. Would you like to tell us what and how you've learned and expertised in at the current field that you're excelling in?
A lot of it's driven by sort of business questions. So I've worked with a lot of like demographic data. I've worked with electricity data. And work with healthcare. So a lot of it is driven marketing, so a lot of it is driven by the area in which I'm working. So I think each field has each industry has different takeaways that they're looking to get from it. Lovely. And so I think it's more understanding why people are using it, and then think about, how your own skill sets and knowledge, and there's a lot of business expertise that goes with it. And I think that's really kind of the hidden key.
Okay, that's lovely. So according to you, what should one work around when there are limitations with BI? I believe there's a limitation with the size that you can upload. So how can you work around that?
There's not an explicit limitation with size. It will get a lot slower if it's really big. So one option is you can select the query type. So it's recommended that you use the import connection, because that's going to cache your data, right? So what we see here is that I loaded it, right? So if we go into the data, we see all the data loaded. But there's other data connections we can use too. There's the direct query, which doesn't load the data. It caches caches a small amount of it in the visuals. And that you want to use direct query if you're working with a very large data set and you want to query like a small part of it, and it's going to be updated frequently. And you're really kind of focusing on, the way to describe it is if you're focusing on one small piece of the big picture at once. So what I do is I use import until it slows down, but it holds a lot more than Power BI. I mean, I've been able to load like millions of rows and it hasn't been a problem. So it's Excel compared, sorry.
Okay, fair enough. So if not size, there must have been some other limitations. So how do you work around them?
So other limitations, I mean, a lot of limitations you run into everywhere. There's bandwidth, right? There's only so many queries the database will take at once. The one of the approaches is just, if you start with import and you let's say you're building something out, is you don't need to refresh it like every day. You just need to build it so you can refresh it. And then, there's desktop versions, and that's kind of the development version. And then there's pro and premium accounts. There's also Power BI report server. And what that enables is that lets us then we can share the work, and we can also set refresh schedules. So you can set a time to upload it. I mean, the other thing is if you refresh your data at a time when no one else is refreshing it, or you kind of pick a slot when it's not going to, run into something else. That's another strategy, with dealing with data like this and other data.
Okay, fair enough. So one of the last questions is, we do have a lot of startup enthusiasts, with us joining in the session. So they ask if when kickstarting with Power BI, what is the keynote that one should begin with, or what should be the first thing that they should be looking upon when kickstarting with BI?
What do you mean by kickstart? Do you mean just learning it to begin with?
Yeah.
I would say it's kind of iterative in a way. So in this example, I used a nice clean data set because I actually edited it so it was clean beforehand. But typically there's a lot of data cleaning. So I mentioned with Power Query, using the Power Query editor, you can do a lot of the editing in there. So I would say, you can build something small. This is data from Gapminder, and if you want the links later, I can share that with you. You can grab the data from Gapminder, and that's all well formatted. It's all in Google Sheets. You just have to use the pivot functionality, which is one of my favorites. And then there's, I would say that it's a lot of the work comes down to data. So there's only so much you can really do if your data is not where you want it to be. So, you can set up an example like this. I hope some of you can try this out on your own. But then, kind of as you grow, as you learn more about Power BI, is focusing on how to clean, how to get the data into a structure where you can use it and where it's, clean and ready to use in other analysis.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you so much for answering the questions. So before we wrap up, I'd like to tell you that your insights upon Power BI and how it rolls around in the society, amidst the plethora of information, especially the run through that you did with us, are going to be some of the key features that we will be taking back home. So a huge thank you for that, for being a part of the session and passing on the knowledge and expertise. And before, it was lovely to have a talk with you. But before that, I'd like to take a few moments to thank the mentors and the supporters for the event. We are blessed for the constant support and encouragement from Honorable Professor Dr. Mangesh Karad Sir, Executive President and Vice Chancellor, MIT ADT University. A big thank you to our mentors, Dr. Anand Chakradev Sir, Pro Vice Chancellor, and Dr. Mahesh Chopre Sir, Registrar, MIT ADT University, for their constant cooperation and motivation in such events. I extend my sincere appreciation to all the deans, directors, HOIs, and HODs at MIT ADT University. Your support encourages us to progress and flourish. I'm thankful to our ecosystem partners who supported and guided us throughout the International Summit. A huge thank you to our knowledge partners, University at Buffalo, Blockchain Think Lab, California Science and Technology University, Center for Finance, Technology and Entrepreneurship, and Natalie EV Consulting. To our technology partners, Asset Rush, Kaleido, Big ID, PayMonk, InnoWise, Steezy, Settlement, Securo, Robotex India, and Radicad. A big thank you to our education partners, Microsoft, Salesforce, Atos, SAP, Edupeer, AI Beehive, CloudThat, and Skills Factory. To our community partners, OWASP Foundation, Women in Cybersecurity and Privacy, InfoSec Girls, India Blockchain Forum, Global Blockchain Business Council, Women in Blockchain Talks, and MKAI. To our innovation partners, AIC, MIT ADT, Incubator Forum, CerebroSpark Innovations LLP. A huge thank you to our certification partner, True Scholar, and a bigger one to digital marketing partner, Brand Neeti, Integrated Strategic Advertising, and Media Agency. Finally, I would like to thank the audience from the bottom of my heart who took out their precious time and joined us today. I request you to kindly share your valuable feedback. The link will be in the chat box shortly, or you could look it up on the screens. And also note that the plethora of sessions that are lined up for today can be seen on your screens, or you can look them up on www.mitfutureskills.org/WFET. Let us meet once again using the very same link at 9:30 a.m. for the session AI, Ethics and You by Ms. Rupa Singh, founder, AI Beehive, and AI ethicist and thought leader. Thank you very much for joining us, ma'am.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you so much for
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great evening, and we'll definitely catch up once again.
Thank you. All right, take care and have a good conference. Bye.
Take care.
Bye. Thank you.